Giradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Munatira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari
So, we're reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, third canto, chapter 26, 51. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Tatastena Luvedebhyo
Tatastena Vidhebhyo
Yuktebhyo Nam Achetanam Uditam Purusho Yasmad Udattishtat Asau Virat
Ustatishtat Asau Virat
Tatastena
Vidhebhyo
Yuktebhyo Nam Achetanam
Yuktebhyo Dhammachetanam
Uditam Purusho Yasmad
Uttitam Purusho Yasmat
Udattishtat Asau Virat
Udatishtat Asau Virat Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Achetanam Uttitam Purusho Yasmat Udatishtat Asau Virat Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Dhammachetanam Uttitam Purusho Yasmat Udatishtat Asau Virat Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Dhammachetanam Uttitam Purusho Yasmat Udatishtat Asau Virat Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Dhammachetanam Uttitam Purusho Yasmat Udatishtat Asau Virat
Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Dhammachetanam Uttitam Purusho Yasmat
Uttitam Purusho Yasmad Udatishtat Asau Virat
Tastinanu Viddebhyo Viddebhyo Namachetanam Uditam Purusho Yasmad
Udatishtat Asau Virat Uttitam Purusho Yasmad Udatishthadasau Virat.
Word for word, tataha,
Tataha.
then, tena,
Tena.
by the Lord,
By the Lord.
anuviddebhya,
Anuviddebhya.
from these seven principles,
From these seven principles.
roused into activity,
Roused into activity.
yuddebhya,
Yuktebhya.
united,
United.
andam,
Andam.
and egg,
And egg.
achetana,
Achetana.
unintelligent,
Unintelligent.
udditam,
Uttitam.
arose,
Rose.
purushaha,
Purushaha.
cosmic being,
Cosmic being.
yasmad,
Yasmad.
from which,
From which
udatishtat,
Udatishtat.
appeared, asau,
So
that,
that.
virat,
Virat.
celebrated.
Celebrate.
Translation. From these seven principles roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being. In sex life, the combination of matter from appearance, which involves emulsification and secretion, creates the situation whereby a soul is received within matter, and the combination of matter gradually develops into a complete body. The same principle exists in the universal creation. The ingredients were present, but only when the Lord entered into the material elements was matter actually agitated. That is the cause of creation. We can see this in our ordinary experience. Although we may have clay, water, and fire, the elements take the shape of a brick only when we labor to combine them. Without the living energy, there is no possibility that matter can take shape. Similarly, this material world does not develop unless agitated by the Supreme Lord as the Virat Purusha, Yasmad Udatishtat Asau Virat. By his agitation, space was created, and the universal form of the Lord also manifested therein. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Svapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So you have to forgive me, I'm quite under the weather, so I'm super bright idea bushy tail this morning. But I'm trying to share some realizations or thoughts I had on this verse. Again, this whole chapter is pretty scientific and pretty straightforward. You just have to study all the aspects of it. This came from this, this came from this, this came from this. So that kind of thing. So, one of the first things I thought of was this chapter and this verse also is directly paralleled by an ancient hymn called Purusha Sukta, which is, or Sukta, sorry, Sukta is something different. Purusha Sukta, which is a ancient hymn that describes basically the Virat form, the universal form of the Lord. And from him came the Sudras, from him came the Vaishyas, from this part of the body came this, and then these elements and all these kind of things. So, this description of his manifestation, expansion of the material world it's not just in the Puranas or different specific things like we're reading now in Bhāgavatam. It's actually from all over Shastra, different Vedas, like Purusha Sukta, I believe, is from Shukla Yajurveda. So these are very ancient hymns from the beginning of time. And it's important to understand these foundational principles of the material world. So, in translation, Prabhu says, from these 7 principles which are aroused into activity. So, who remembers what these 7 principles were from the last class or the one before that? Looks like nobody was paying attention. Correct, yeah. So, yeah, false ego, Mahatattva, and the 5 material elements, which are ether, fire, water, earth, and I think ether actually technically counts as air. And at least in, because I was just reading it, in the previous, Prabhu described it in an interesting way.
It's different.
Yeah, he's saying ether is technically, but he's saying, so earth, water, fire, air, and sky. He was saying sky, yeah, sky, which means obviously ether, but sometimes we think of it as air. So it's basically the same thing. So, yeah, and then also, so these 7 elements, that's what they are. And he probably, like, again and again, hammers this point so many times in his books and also in his conversations and classes. If you hear Prabhupada's audio that we have so preciously and wonderfully preserved, again and again and again and again and again and again, he hammers the same point that without the presence of the Lord and without being activated, you could say, by the Lord, that nothing can, no living entity and no creation, no activity can take place in the material world. That the Supreme Lord is he's the catalyst for everything in this material existence. So, for example, like at Boston, at MIT, Prabhupada went there very early days, maybe Krishna Prabhu, who knows, I think it was 68 or 67, I forget the year, but very early. And Prabhupada went there and very boldly challenged them. You know, you have this such a fancy school for studying this material world and how to create this, how to create that, but if I give you some of the basic material elements, I give you some, you know, some carbon, some oxygen, some all these different things, and I tell you, okay, now create life, create a body, create an embryo, create anything. Can you do it? And you know, the response, oh, well, no. So no, is the answer no, because without the permission, without the presence of the Lord, and also without the permission of the Lord, it's not possible for life to be created. Prabhupada was very fond of one publication, Life Comes from Life, which is a very key fundamental principle that he would stress. So it comes up here also in this verse in purple, saying, although we may have clay, water, and fire, the elements take the shape of a brick on when we labor to combine them. Without the living energy, there is no possibility that matter can take shape. Similarly, this material world does not develop unless agitated by the Supreme Lord as the Vraja Purusha. So, yeah, same thing. Without the presence of, not directly Krishna, then nothing in this material world can transform, take place. Prabhupada also gives on this point of the permission of the presence of the Lord. I was just reading yesterday in the 7th canto, in the purple, because that just goes to show you everywhere Prabhupada talks about this. Even sometimes the verse has nothing to do with it, and Prabhupada just brings it up. So, he was saying about a fertile man and a woman. They might combine and they want to have a child, but if the Supreme Lord doesn't sanction it, then there will be no result. And he also gives the example of doctor and good medicine. One may have the best doctor in the world, paying him millions of dollars to perform some operation to cure you of your cancer, or to bring back your hair, your beautiful hair, or to do whatever. He may have the best medicine, he's the best doctor, best medicine, but the Supreme Lord doesn't give the sanction, there'll be no result, there'll be no success. So, we have to see things. Actually, it's interesting, the vision of devotee is that everything is happening because of the sanction of the Supreme Lord. Every little thing, every big thing. Not just in our, tiny little bubble of our life, but in the entire universe. And that, especially for a devotee, that Krishna is supremely well-wishing, so that everything that happens is for our own benefit. So, in this chapter, in this verse, it's talking all about the different elements of this material world. So I was reflecting on that, especially because I'm sick. I was reflecting on that. It's discussed also very extensively in the Ayurveda Shastra, these different elements of the material world, and how they make up our body, how they make up our food, they make up everything. Everything in this material world is made up by these different material elements, gross and subtle. So, in Sanskrit or in Ayurveda, the term is Pancha Mahabhutas, which basically means the 5 great elements or building blocks that everything is made from. So, I thought we could go a little bit into that. It's quite interesting, actually. When you begin to perceive the material world through the eyes of Shastra like this, actually everything makes perfect sense. I got sick because I was out late at night when it was cold and there was too much wind, and I was singing too loud, and I didn't have my neck protected and my head protected. Therefore, the cold entered here and it created a cough problem. So like that. Or I ate too much ghee one day, and then I had a samosa, and then I had some gulab jamuns on top of it 30 minutes later, and then for some reason my stomach was upset. So like that, it makes a lot of sense. So maybe we'll do a little quiz. So we're just going to go through the names of the different Mahabhutas, the different material elements, in Sanskrit also, because it's quite interesting. So maybe we'll give everyone else, except for Krishna, a chance first, because you probably will get these quite easily. So who knows? There's probably many different names also, but these are the most common ones. Who knows the names on earth in Sanskrit? Bhumi, yes. Bhumi, or sometimes also Prithvi. And then water. A few different names also. Honey. Good try though.
Appa.
Appas, right? Yeah, appas. So, same in Bengali.
Jal.
Jala, Varuna, appas. Fire.
Agni.
And air.
Vayu.
Vayu. And then what about ether?
Akash.
Yes, Akash. Sometimes also called Dyaus, or Dyao. Like maybe there's for Dyao Shanti, there's Shanti, Prithvi Shanti also. So, those are the different Mahabhutas. then in terms of the material body, we can also perceive these 5 material elements through what's called doshas, or it's basically our different body makeups, but then we can characterize our body. Well, interestingly, it's characterized like on what becomes imbalanced more easily in the body. So each individual living entity has a particular makeup of earth, fire, water, and ether in their bodies, and that creates like a different, stereotype, or a different composition basically of these different elements for their unique body. So, for example, let's do another quiz. If we have 3 doshas, primary doshas, what are they called? Yeah, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Prabhu sometimes says Vayu for Vata. The same meaning here-ish. So, what are the primary elements of Vata? Air and ether, correct. And what about Pitta? Fire and water. And Kapha? Earth and water, right. So, these elements and these all these 3 doshas can be found in every body and everything, but it's just in different proportions. So, they combine and they create different climates, foods, species, different individuals even within the same species. And it provides one actually with a blueprint. That was the word I was looking for. A blueprint for what the body's optimal health can be or should be, and how to cater for that. Well, how to cater for that is what comes through Ayurveda, learning how to balance your physical and mental makeup. So, qualities of the different doshas also are quite interesting, because we can perceive them in, for example, different seasons. Like right now we're in winter, which is a season of Vata. So Vata is quite easily imbalanced in the season, which can be perceived, for example, by dry skin or stiff joints, stiff bones, all that kind of thing. It's more, the qualities of Vata are like dry, light, cold, rough, subtle, mobile, and clear. And I think all of us are now at least feeling the cold and the dry. It's quite hard to stay warm in the season, but it's very important. And Pitta, some of its qualities are hot, sharp, light, liquid, spreading, and oily. Kapha's qualities are heavy, slow, cool, oily, smooth, dense, soft, stable, gross, and cloudy. So, for example, when you get we call it a cold or something, or sickness. Generally, there's 2 main reasons for it. One is kapha sickness, which means you have a lot of mucus. You feel very tired, very slow, very dense in your physical body, and a lot of congestion. So those are the qualities of kapha. So you can understand how to also treat it. You do the exact opposite of that. And another common cold is a vata cold, which means it's very dry. So you have dry, raspy throat, your nasal passages are very, dry and sore. And you may feel quite imbalanced, quite, unstable, ungrounded. So these are the, which is these 5 material elements that we're hearing about, manifested within the physical it's very interesting learning how to actually properly balance these things, because by doing that one can live a very stable life. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta chetasya kramasi, yukta svātvaga bodhasya, yoga bhavati dukkha. So, learning to take care of one's health is not something we always think of when we first come to Krishna consciousness. We think more of, abhyasa yoga yuktena chitta sadhana bhavana parama purusham. Just meditate and focus and, don't be distracted by anything and, all these things. Thus you'll come to me, yes, I'll just do that. Forget about everything else. But very quickly we find out that, we have a pure body, we have a mind. We have to find ways also to deal with those, to balance them, and engage in Krishna service in a very holistic way. So this is a very useful way to do that. And something very interesting that I thought, because most of us, it's quite easily understandable what is ether, what is fire, what is water, what is earth, what is, air, what are these things, quite easily understandable. But then, what is ether? What actually is ether, right? There's a little bit of gray, it's a bit of a gray area. So, ether, as some of us might have heard from earlier parts of the chapter, ether is essentially the, it's the area, it's the space, it's the area within everything and surrounding everything. So, it provides everything else a space to exist. So, like for example, if you have paper, and you might draw many things on the paper, you need to have a paper to draw. So ether performs that kind of a function. For example, within the universe, there needs to be somewhere for, Bhūmatala to exist. There needs to be somewhere for Swargaloka to exist, for Narakaloka to exist. There needs to be, and also within those realms there needs to be space for different objects, different living entities to be able to move, to be able to do all these things. Otherwise we would just have one block. If there's no ether, basically, all elements would be combined. It would just be one big amorphous existence. So, ether is quite an interesting thing I thought, because it's not so commonly understood. Could discuss it a little bit. Even within the body, for example, who can think of where ether is present?
Within the organs?
Within the organs, Stomach, for example, you have to have space in the stomach, otherwise how can things go and come out? Anywhere else? In the head,
In the blood vessels.
Blood vessels, exactly. Probably should say something. Some of us have more space in the head, and some have less space in the head. So, basically any cavity, any space within the body, there's ether present. That's what allows that. So, interesting also some excess signs of ether in the body. If one has too much ether, then it leads to spaciness, a sense of detachment, ungroundedness, dizziness, restlessness, heart palpitations, insomnia. Also that can be vata. And then one who's deficient, one who doesn't have enough ether, will be stubborn, like inflexible, very, not fluid, not moving. Tightness in their channels, asthma, muscle soreness due to restriction, can be thyroid problems, different things like that. So, it's quite an interesting, very essential element that we don't think about quite often because it's just there. You don't have to you don't feel it. You don't really do anything to interact with it that much, but it's there. It's the basis for what other elements exist. Yeah, so this verse is pretty straightforward. So if we can open up for discussion or any questions, if we have anything now. If anyone would like to.
It's not working.
It's not working. Well, I guess you could speak very loud. It's not working.
Krishna.
It's working.
Hey, it's working.
Hi Krishna. Thank you for the class again. It's really nicely laid out. A lot of nice points, very practical. I have a question because you mentioned that when we get sick, we can think about the root cause of that. So maybe I was out late and singing too loudly, etc. But also I'm curious, does it happen also like on a mental plane? So if we make an offense or something, can it come out in the form of a physical illness? Or if we have something going on in the mind, can it manifest physically? We've heard this before, so.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Definitely true. Yeah.
So then, to kind of cure that, is it most important to go to the root then, or focus on like the mentality? But is this true for every illness though? Because sometimes it is just being outside and singing too loudly. It might not be from something that happened internally, like mentally. But if it is something that happened from an offense or something, like how can we know if it is just from something that happened, on the physical plane, or if it's something that happened due to the mind? And then also, would a way to cure that also happen on a mental plane? That we would have to change the mentality and then the illness will go away? Or is it important to focus on fixing the illness by balancing these doshas you speak about?
Yeah, that's a very good point actually. I didn't discuss that, but that's very true. That I remember actually Indraduma Swami quoted from, I don't remember where he quoted from, I remember the class. He quoted that there's three causes, I believe it was three causes of sickness or disease, dis-ease. Dis-ease meaning imbalance or coming out of a state of natural, easy health. So one was undigested food, one was undigested thoughts. So that exactly relates. And what was the other? Undigested food, undigested thoughts, undigested emotions. That was the third. So that's actually, that's completely true. That an imbalance in the mind also can create many sicknesses. That's very prominent actually nowadays in our material societies. There's a lot of mental disease, a lot of mental disorders, which lead to gross disorders, also which lead to emotional disorders. People become very angry for no reason, attack other people or steal things or do this, it's just because of these imbalances. So, for things like for mental disorders or for mental imbalances, it can help. With the symptoms to balance the material, the gross external situation. But of course, you have to deal with the mental situation. You have to balance mentally, and that has to be taken care of in order to solve the problem at the root. Otherwise, you're just solving the. And then your other question regarding if some things are just material, like in terms of getting sick, that's also true, because there are mentally also just interaction of the material elements within your body and within the world, and then one or more become imbalanced within your body. That creates a disorder or a dis-ease, and then, like for example, your coffee becomes too much. It overwhelms the other elements. It comes out of balance, and then it manifests as congestion, runny nose, all these kinds of things. Too much of the solid, liquidy, or how do you say, dense nature in the body. So, yeah, those two, the subtle body and the gross body, both have to be balanced. Otherwise, either one can get sick. It's true. Did that cover everything? Was there something I missed?
Yeah, from my side, yeah, thank you. It's very clear. Krishna.
On one interesting fact, my Bhāgavatam Prabhu would always tell us in his classes that in the last 50 years, mental health experts or doctors or whatever you want to say, they've taken track that like previously, say in 1950, the mental health manual of how to deal with different diseases and what diseases there are and all that kind of thing will say like 100 pages.
Yeah.
I was like an encyclopedia.
It's been updated like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, and actually a huge amount of that comes from these. It's very unbalancing for the mind, for the intelligence, for the ether. Because if you want to know something, just type in there and follow where it is.
Soak it all.
Hey Krishna, I was just wondering if you could elaborate on what the cosmic being is.
Mm.
It says an egg. Is it kind of like a...
Yeah, that's interesting. I did research that. The cosmic being is referring to the universal form, the Brahman, sorry. I'll just read the universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva increase in thickness one after another in each layer. Within this egg is the universal form of Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts. So, it's the Brahmanda, I guess you would say. But then, the cosmic being, my understanding, is what's being referred to as Vraja Vishnu. From the unintelligent egg arose from which appeared the subject cosmic being. I was thinking it might be Brahma, right? But in the next verse, he's saying, within this egg, the universal form of Hari, of whose body the 14 planetary systems are part, came from. So, my understanding is it would be Garbage Vishnu, the universal form of Lord Hari.
Yeah, that's
From
what that
within
means.
the egg.
He's a super soul of things.
Yeah. So, like I said. Yeah, I found it interesting also. From an unintelligent egg arose the celebrated cosmic being. And Prabhu translates the word achetana, which also literally means unconscious or thinking, something like that. So, yeah, that same thing that consciousness only comes from the presence of Krishna. As soon as he comes into it, or Vishnu, as soon as he comes into the unconscious egg, the whole manifestation comes. Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, the word Brahmanda is comes from the two words Brahma and Anda.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the whole spherical, which includes the 14 planetary systems. Whereas Bhūmanda is just a plane which bisects things.
just like floating in this cosmic egg,
Yeah.
just like floating around trying to enjoy. It's like a high security prison. And then I was also thinking about, we should just mention how Ramana just like, here's to do that, like, just with 2 steps.
One step.
Yeah, 1 step. So, but anyways, it's like the Bhāgavatam is so cool. It's like there's so many intricate things you can get, and then it leads up, of course, to the 10th canto. But all these other intricate things are so cool to like understand the intricacies of at least for like someone who wants to stimulate their intellectual desires, like me. So, yeah, it's really fascinating.
Well, it's kind of related.
Catch.
That was hard.
Well, I think, okay, I think that it's just very difficult for me to understand. But when you think of that painting with Mahavishnu sitting there, and he has all the universes coming out in the pores and the little holes, is that related at all to this egg and cosmic being?
Yes, because that's Mahavishnu. So from him all the Brahmandas are coming, from him all the universes are coming. From each of his pores, millions of universes are emanating, right? And then each of those universes is a Brahmanda, correct? Each of those universes is the you could say all the elements together that we just discussed, all the different layers, and then within them, within that there's Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who's lying on the Garbhodak ocean, and then all the different planetary, what we call planetary systems, you could say, the different levels of existence are there. So from Vishnu's body, he's lying on the Karnataka ocean, the causal ocean, and from his body he's emanating all of these universes, which are Brahmandas. And within those Brahmandas is Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who's lying on the Garbhodak ocean, and he manifests Brahma, and Brahma creates all the different planetary systems and forms of life and all that kind of thing.
So is Brahmanda like because Brahmanda is also spiritual, right? It's not material?
No, it's material.
Well, I mean, it depends how you see things, but yeah, technically it's material. Because everything is spiritual in a sense. But yeah. Brahmanda is a material universe.
This verse is specifically talking about Garbhodakshay Vishnu.
Yeah.
And one single egg of the universe. I mean, of all the universes, one universe, like one particular universal egg.
Mm.
Could be anyone, but it's not one.
Yeah. Reminds me of this pastime of Tamal Krishna Maharaj Prabhupada, where he says, he brings it all the way down. I'm sure everyone's heard that pastime. He's saying, there's Karnadakshay Vishnu, and from him millions of universes are emanating from his body pores. And then if you go within one of those universes, then there's Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and he's, manifests what Brahma creates all the planets. And within all those planets, there's a planet Earth. And within that planet Earth, there's so many continents and oceans and cities. And within those continents, there's America. And within America, there's Los Angeles. And within Los Angeles, there's a street, Watseka. And within that street, there's a temple, Hare Krishna temple. And in one of those rooms of that temple, Tamal Krishna is thinking he's very important. So it really brings things down from the grand scale of creation down to us thinking we're the center of the universe. And, if my Amazon order didn't come on time, I'm going to destroy, I'm going to manifest the flames of destruction and, blasting someone. And, how is it possible? So it really, brings it down to insignificant. We are in this existence, and it's quite funny. So, did that help? Question?
shared space for creation.
A network of what? Sorry, I missed the word. Network.
Does the ether serve as a network for understanding?
A network for understanding. I mean, I guess in the sense of sound, yes, yeah, but understanding more comes from intelligence, from the, like the ability to process things and like understand things in that sense. More comes from the subtle intelligence. The mind has to digest it, and the intelligence like grasps it. But in the sense of sound, yes, because I'm speaking something which is manifesting as sound. It's going into your ear, and then you can receive information, you can process it. So in that sense, yes, but ether more generally is, you could say, the space. It's the via medium by which all the other elements and all the other things can interact and manifest.
Would that serve as the cosmic background?
Basically, yeah, you could say that, yeah. Yeah. I mean, because of ether, it creates possibility for every living entity to move and to interact and to do all these things. If there were no ether, as we were saying, it would just be a big blob, one big glob of fire and water and earth and, some air, and we would just be that perfect,
Thank you.
Just to add to that too, I heard something that's really cool. So when we think of sound, sometimes like people say like ether is the medium by which sound moves through, but like it's not just like the sound that's talked about in material science, where it's like I'm saying something and it's compressing air, and that compressed air is entering into your ear. It's like, okay, like think of a word. Like let's say, think of a word and then just say it in your mind. Just think of a word. And don't say it, just say it in your mind.
Straight.
Okay, say another word in your mind without saying it out loud. You heard it. Yeah, so it's kind of like, ether is also, it's like the medium by which we're actually understanding like information as well. So it's like that's why like chanting is so amazing, because it's also purifying the ether. And said that Kali Yuga is like so crazy because the ether is so polluted. So that's the basis of like the collective net of consciousness as well as understanding.
Does the ether serve as that residual space of silence to recollect your mind for eternal consciousness?
Kind of a complicated question. Well, ether, you could say, it's hard to say, yeah. I mean, ether you could say is silent by nature, because in and of itself, it doesn't have like interaction. None of these material elements have interaction in and of themselves. But by the presence of Krishna within them, then they have potency to interact, to move, to do all these things. So, yeah, in and of themselves, none of these things have life or have potency, like we're reading. But when Krishna or Vishnu in the material world, when he enters into each atom, each living entity, and he accompanies them, like for example in this body, there's my soul, and then there's also the super soul, or Krishna. We're different people, but we're related, just like sparks of a fire and the whole fire. So, only because of the presence of Krishna, then I also can come within this body, I can do all these things, I can interact. Whereas if the super soul wasn't present there, then I would not have any connection to the rest of the universe. Right. Does that make sense?
It did, but I feel like my question is more so, does the ether, is it a space that's traveled through, or is it something that is picked up and retained and only meditated through silence? Because it's naturally silent.
Well, the thing is, ether's, it's like an element, it's a material element. It's just like, if you say water, you know, it's like a physical, graspable thing. Ether is more subtle. You can't exactly like say that I'm holding ether, you know. So yes, you travel through it, you could say, but yeah, it's complicated. It's also retained because it is literally present in everything, right? So man, might need some leadership.
Text 34 of this chapter, it gives the definition of ether, and it says the activities and characteristics of the ethereal element can be observed as accommodation for the room for external and internal existence of all living entities, the field of activities, the vital air, the senses, and the mind. So it basically is just there so that we can exist.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ether
It's like the-
accommodates existence.
Yeah. It's the foundational platform, like I was saying. We have 2.5 minutes. Yeah.
Well, I just had a note on the first thing, the first question that you answered. Because in text 50, it also talks about how everything comes to life, and it says that along with time, work, and the modes of nature, those are the three things which are all Krishna. Krishna says, time I am, he is the ability of man, and the Maya is his internal potency. So those are the three things that make life come to life.
What are the two things again?
Time, work, the qualities of the modes of material nature.
And of course the super soul.
Material existence.
Yeah. Okay. Rendering Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai. You guys are from